Hello, thank you for clicking on to our Gold Cup preview on attheraces.com. Of course, the race which in some respects for many people dominates the week. It was founded back in 1807, the Gold Cup, and I wonder whether it's a feature for our guest in the studio here, Gary Nutting. In fact, it could be from last year, because you were very sweet on Rite of Passage, Gary, 12 months ago, weren't you?
Yeah, in the anti-post column, I tipped it at 20 to 1, and like all my great anti-post tips, it went off at 20 to 1.
Well, nobody minded that on the day, because he fought out the finish. We'll see in a moment or two, but he's amongst the entries, of course, to defend his title, and we can pick out one or two others in there as well. Ascot Tau, he's a possible, with a chance there. Darley's son Duncan, the Yorkshire Cup winner. Fame and Glory, of course, more about him in a moment. Geordie Land is back. Richard Hughes has been booked to ride him, with a bit to prove perhaps these days. And down there amongst the younger horses, Theology. So let's look at the race last year, which established Rite of Passage as the one, perhaps the one to beat this year. It was a fantastic finish.
And Rite of Passage is cutting the leader back. On the outside, Purple Moon stays on well. Then Bannaby and Ask as they race towards the final furlong. Age of Aquarius with Rite of Passage, the big challenge on the outside. Purple Moon is 2 lengths down in third, followed by Bannaby. Rite of Passage gets to Age of Aquarius, an all-Irish finish. And it's Rite of Passage, Age of Aquarius on the far side. Neck and neck as they race up towards the line. Rite of Passage and Pat Smullen lands the Gold Cup, beats Age of Aquarius. They're clear of Purple Moon, and a long gap then to Bannaby.
Well, Rite of Passage, of course, didn't reappear until fairly recently in the Savile Bake Stakes at Leopardstown. Gary, there's a story recently came out that Dermot Weld was saying that he was taking it day by day with him, and the quote in the Racing Post the other day was proving not the easiest of keeping him right for the Gold Cup. I mean, is this are these smoke signals to be taken seriously, do you think?
Well, one thing that did amuse me was it was a story that was plastered over the front page of the Racing Post, and it was one of those stories where the headline took up more space than the number of paragraphs below it, which should immediately make you slightly suspicious. It looks to me as though words got out that the horse isn't easy to train. Well, you know, he's a 7-year-old who's only raced about 12 times in his life.
Yeah, we knew that,
so
didn't we?
I think we probably know that anyway. I suspect that's the case. I think they've probably gone to him. You know, somebody has said, "Oh, there's a slight problem with the horse," and he said, "Well, yes, but you know, in the story, he said the horse had worked that morning, and he was happy with him, and that yes, you know, he does have 1 or 2 issues, but they'd make a decision at the weekend." Immediately in the aftermath of that, the horse is still 3 to 1 with bookmakers and only 4 to 1 on Betfair. You know, if he was a serious doubt, he'd be bigger than that on Betfair, wouldn't he?
I think he probably would, wouldn't he? Yeah. Were you satisfied with his comeback in the Savile Beg? Because this was, of course, the if you like, the prelude with Fame and Glory, the horse that they're training to be the new Yates at Ballydoyle, who beat him. But this was 1 mile and 6, Gary.
Yeah, and obviously Fame and Glory had already had a run this season. So he had a decided fitness edge. Dermot Weld said beforehand that Rite of Passage would need the race. This, in fact, is the first time Rite of Passage has ever been beaten on the flat. It's only about his 5th race on the flat, but
good call.
You wouldn't be disappointed with that if you're a Rite of Passage fan, given that he'd been off since last year's Gold Cup. And you know, I think it's significant that Dermot Weld shunned the opportunity to run him in the Melbourne Cup and run him back over hurdles purely to train him for another Gold Cup. He's made the point that, you know, there are so very few specialists. You know, horses that stay 2 miles at the top level don't always stay 2.5.
Yeah.
He knows he's got one here. He's set out his stall, and when a trainer of his standing does that, you know, I think we've got to sit up and take notice.
Good point. What do you make of Fame and Glory as a cup horse? I mean, he's classy, all right. He was the Irish Derby winner, Irish Champion Stakes winner, second to see the stars in our Derby a couple of years ago. Are you convinced he'll be as effective at 2.5 miles?
Well, I think the first thing to say is if he does get the trip well, then obviously with his 1.5 mile Group 1 winning form, you know, he'll win. But no, I'm not convinced, and I think, you know, that race he won it comfortably enough. But you didn't come away from that thinking this horse is crying out for another
three quarters of a mile.
Yeah. you know, obviously it'll be run slightly differently and he'll be held up longer. But I think two things slightly worry me about him as far as the Gold Cup is concerned. One, he's by Montjeu, who, you know, is definitely a horse who imparts more talent than out-and-out guts, shall we say. And, you know, that's what you need. You need guts in this 2.5 mile race at Ascot. And the other thing is the comparison's been made with Yates. Well, Yates was much more lightly raced and had much less hard races compared to Fame and Glory. You know, Fame and Glory has run twice as many times as Yates had before he ran in his first Gold Cup. And he's been, you know, bashing his head against really good
opposition.
Really good, you know, Group 1 horses over 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a bit difficult making that direct comparison because I think they're going into... comparatively, they're going into a Gold Cup with very different backgrounds.
A point well made. Let's check out the home defence, if you like. Duncan, a horse who won the Yorkshire Cup last time out from Blue Bayesian, who could be back as well in this race on Thursday. He was second in the Hardwick Stakes last year. Not a bad run behind the mighty Harbinger, Gary. Is he a serious contender in your opinion?
Got the basic ability. Impossible to know how he's going to handle the trip. Not for me personally, but as I say, he's definitely got the raw ability, and you know, he's staying on well there, isn't he, over 1.5 miles? But as has often been said, you know, horses that show high class form at 1.5 miles aren't necessarily going to transfer it to a Gold Cup distance.
Same point you made about Fame and Glory, because he won one of the Arc Trials last year, didn't he, in gutsy fashion, because he is quite quirky, Duncan, isn't he?
He is. I mean, his talent's going to carry him a long way, there's no doubt about that. But as Rite of Passage showed against Age of Aquarius, you know, over those last 2 furlongs, it's not talent you need, it's raw guts.
I quite like Ascot. We haven't got any footage of him to show just here, but I'd give him a chance because I think he is one that does genuinely stay. Yes,
he's a bit quirky, but he's one of those horses that if he got the run of the race and, you know, got into a good rhythm, you could see him maybe throwing down some sort of threat in the straight.
And Theology, I get the impression he's also been trained very much with this race in mind by Jeremy Nazida. I think he's just prepping him all the way for this big day.
Yeah, I think similar remarks apply as with Ascot. I think this horse is a bit quirky, but stays well, and he's another one that, you know, you could see finishing to good effect. But it does look as though the market's got this right, and it is between Rite of Passage and Fame and Glory. I'm not sure the others are good enough, with the possible exception of Duncan. And as I say, it's real unknown territory for him. So we'll see. But Rite of Passage would be a clear favourite for me.
Okay, just a little word about Holberg. We can't leave him out. Godolphin Light winning the Gold Cup. They've done it before with the likes of Cape Tara, classic cliche. He was disappointing perhaps at Sandown, but will he be, if on top form, would he be a threat to make it?
He won the Queen's Vase last year, didn't he?
He did.
Which, you know, isn't the greatest Royal Ascot race, as we know. Yeah, if he needed that run at Sandown and he's come on demonstrably for it, then yeah, you know, he'd have frame possibilities at his best.
But you're a big Rite of Passage fan to defend his title.
Yes, and I'm not going to be put off by the massive headline in the Racing Post. I think it's a good thing, actually.